How will the Dolphins make up $12 million in cap space and create the money and the resources they need to build this roster that needs to be fully replenished? We will tackle that today on Dolphins In Depth, a podcast provided to you by the Miami Herald. I am your host, Miami Dolphins columnist Omar Kelly, and joining me is a gentleman who should seem quite familiar to most of you, especially if you're familiar with my work. It's Alain Poupart of SI fame. Alain is also the sole proprietor, creator, content producer of the All Dolphins podcast, a podcast that I used to be familiar with, and I still drop by from time to time. And now is the repayment of the drop by. Alain has joined me so we can have our annual Duke It Out session. I don't even want to talk Super Bowl because I'm sorry, the NFL needs the Chiefs to be a dynasty if they want to keep the coffers coming and take down football, not football, OOTBAL, but FUTBOL. So they need the Chiefs to win. The Chiefs will win. I promise you that, Alain.
They really need a bad guy or a dynasty to keep the money flowing. You really think anybody wouldn't watch if it wasn't the Chiefs?
Are they the most popular sports league in the world?
Yes, and they would be regardless of what.
No, they are not. Football is. And football dominates the world. The NFL is not thinking just United States. Hell, how many foreign games are we playing this year?
That's true.
There's still a whole continent of money that we're still not tapped into all over there. Come on. You need the dynasties, Poupart.
No, I don't buy that. Sorry, I'm not buying that.
Oh, so you picking the Eagles to win?
I did pick the Eagles to win, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We shall see on Sunday. But on this episode, we will actually tackle probably the most pressing issue of Dolphins land, which is how are they going to get the money? How are they going to get the credit card to max out? Miami Dolphins are $12 million over the cap, primarily because of irresponsible spending, bad business practices, bad contract extensions. Alain really going to shake his head. Yes. Deals that probably could have waited that didn't wait. Alan's probably going to shake his head. Absolutely, yes. We know how we got there. Okay. Steve Ross wrote a lot of checks he didn't need to write. And unfortunately, I think they were always going to be in this position anyway because they continue to max out one credit card and apply for another one every offseason. This is probably going to be the continued practice until a purge begins, which purge might be next offseason when you start with a new GM and new management. They want to clean the books and things of that sort. But for Mike McDaniel and for Chris Grier to have a fair shake at building a team that will give them a chance to keep their job, and you will agree with that part, that is right, to give them a fair shake at keeping their job.
Sure, but what's it going to take? I mean, fair shake. It's 7-10 without injuries to fall back on. Not going to get it done, no matter what.
No. They've got to produce at least 10, 11 wins.
Okay,
maybe even a playoff win in order to keep their job. But to do that, especially when you look at the roster, I just did a series. I know you're a big part of series in what you do. Tell the people where to find your work, by the way, Poupart.
Miami Dolphins on SI.com. Check it out. Tons of content.
I did a series breaking down every single position, looking at how they did, the problems, and what the potential to rebuild it are. And when you look at every unit by unit, every unit needs to be addressed in some form or fashion. There is not one unit. I would argue maybe wide receivers because you have a solid 3 in Malik Washington. You do.
You have no depth. Yeah, but you have no depth.
When have they ever had depth? You act like they're not just going to re-sign River Craycraft and call it a day or draft some young player and call it a day. They have what was the one they got from Green Bay?
Grant Dubose.
Grant Dubose now. They have Grant Dubose. They have Malik Washington. They have another Washington, Taj Washington. So they got bodies there, but from quarterback, running back, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, edge position, inside linebacker, cornerback, safety. All of it needs to be addressed. You're $12 million in the hole. How do you get that money, Poupart?
It's bad the way you put it. It sounds bad the way you put it.
So put it better so it doesn't sound as bad.
No. And here's the other part too. And I would make the argument, I think they're not going to be able to address, I think, adequately every position, because here's the problem. It's not only that they're $12 million over the cap, they have 27 pending free agents. They signed a bunch of guys last offseason to one-year contracts. Guys that now
intentionally.
Correct. But now what the problem is you have to fill that roster spot because it's $12 million over the cap with, I believe, I don't have the numbers in front of me, maybe 49 players under contract or something like
49 players, and you'll really only count 51. 49 players under contract, you'll only count 51.
Yes.
But there are glaring holes. There's a ton of free agents. Let's all get to the point where and they can't use the franchise tag. You're in another situation like Christian Wilkins, where if you use the franchise tag, you're absolutely handcuffing yourself. So you can wave bye-bye to Javon Holland, because absolutely nobody is going to put a franchise at 19.6 or transition tag at 15.6 on Javon Holland. I'm sorry. Nobody's even going to pay him that. So why would you even do that?
We sure about that?
Oh, I'm absolutely sure. I've seen
sure he
so
doesn't
many
get
lists.
better on the league?
I've seen
17 million.
No, he's not getting 17 million.
Okay.
I have a hard. Now, I said the same thing about Christian Wilkins. I said Christian Wilkins wouldn't get 24 million, and he got 24 million. And same agent represents Javon Holland.
Yep.
I'm sure Javon Holland is going to walk away handsomely rewarded. He's probably going to clear $40 million in guaranteed money. But I have a very hard time believing that another team is going to be out there giving him a $17 million a year contract. Maybe the first three, it's do you really think he's going to go out there and get a mega deal?
I do. I think the perception of Javon Holland around the league is a lot bigger, more emphatic than the production warrants and what we who have watched him for 4 years would probably say. And he's a young guy still, 25 years old. Mm-hmm. There's an impressive physical tool set, and there's a need at the position, and there are teams around the league that do have cap space to spend and are in the market for a young safety. So, yeah, I think he's going to get more than you think he is.
Interesting. I definitely don't expect him to be back here. I don't think the Dolphins have the market for him. I think I don't think they can spend that kind of money on any free agent. And really, I've come through the free agent class of players, and there aren't a lot of players under 30 that's should get the bag or you should break the bank for. I would struggle to find you who's an inside linebacker? Jordan Brooks. I'd struggle to find you a Jordan Brooks type signing here in this free agent class, because most of the guys that are good players have already gotten deals. So what's left over is basically the leftovers. But then again, Jordan Brooks was Seattle's leftover. But how do you get the money? Here's a couple of ways that I'm going to bring up, and I want us to analyze the thought process there. Obviously, Terron Armstead is in the news because he's done Super Bowl row. Sounds like he's absolutely going to be playing in 2025. Sounds like he's talking about the Dolphins as if they are his team. And the Dolphins clearly have to shake him down. Now, if you're Terron Armstead, is there a price point that you don't go below in terms of letting them shake you down?
Well, he took a haircut last offseason, if you recall.
Yes. $5 million haircut. Was it
$5 million?
$5 million. He walked away with $10 million.
Okay. Well, here's the thing is if you're Terron Armstead, and again, understand this, the thing with Terron Armstead, the problem with him is the real value in cap space, if you were to cut him, is to make him post June 1. That doesn't help you get under the cap March 12th. Terron Armstead probably knows that. So that gives him a little bit of leverage.
Okay.
but not to the extent where he controls the entire situation. So I think the Dolphins may have to play nice, and it could be a case where maybe they give him a haircut, not as significant as last year, and do the old restructuring, maybe tack on the old very popular void years with him, like they'll do with Tua, certainly.
Love those void years.
Yes, I know you do.
So
you come around though, because you used to hate him, not want to hear about him, and now you're like, okay, yeah.
No, I still think they're very irresponsible. I mean, but it's just pushing credit card debt further along the line. You're still going to pay the interest rate. It is what it is. Quick question for you is: are the Dolphins really at the point right now where they say, okay, now it's time to be fiscally responsible now? And then we suffer the consequences now when you got McDaniel and Greer. Absolutely not.
Correct.
This is big. This is, if you're going to bring me back, you're going to open up your wallet and you're going to max out another credit card just like you always have. And we're going to continue to conduct ourselves fiscally irresponsible because that's what we've been doing.
Yes.
Here's the only difference that I would say in terms of how I would want these guys to approach this year. Don't go do the Myles Garrett. Don't go do the George Kittle. Don't go pursue for draft picks the big name free agent or guy seeking a new deal, primarily because you have to give them the money and you have to give up the draft pick. This team is so old, so fragile.
How old is it?
Yeah, I can't even tell. It was the second oldest team in the NFL when we started the season. And obviously that's semantics, and you could Jimmy rig it however you want to rig it. But let's be real about this. We don't have on the Miami Dolphins roster a nucleus of 15 solid core young players on this team.
No.
And that's what the draft is for. Now, unfortunately, I used to make the argument, and you are well aware of this argument that I had, which is why not trade the draft picks? It's not like you're going to draft well anyway, which was a valid point. Did I not make a valid point?
But that's almost like saying, why go out on the field on Sunday? We suck anyway. We're going to lose.
No, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. I wrote a column this week in the Miami Herald, and I stumbled on this because somebody was bringing up Liam Eichenberg, and I'd always, I did not criticize Liam Eichenberg in all of 2024. There's nobody who can find. Yeah, I was respectful to Liam Eichenberg, but he's probably the player who the organization is invested in the most that's gotten the least in return. And 2 draft picks, a second-round pick, you trade a third-round pick, 52 starts, and you're just average. And average is being generous. Am I wrong?
No, that's fair. I was about to say if we're being polite. Yeah,
I'm being polite. And the point that made me start doing the research was I couldn't believe that Creed Humphreys was drafted after Liam Eichenberg. Because remember, they had to trade up because they were having this ridiculous run on offensive linemen, and they absolutely, without a doubt, unequivocally had to have Liam Eichenberg. Okay? So you use a second-round pick, then you trade up, and then you have to give a future third-round pick to the Giants for Liam Eichenberg when Creed Humphreys was sitting right there, and you had a need for center. Center was a need. So it puzzles my mind. But then I started looking at that whole draft class, Poupart, and oh God, like a lot of people will say the 2022 draft class did this franchise in. I would disagree with you.
No.
2020 draft class is the one that did this rebuild in. The Tua, Austin Jackson, Noah Igbenogany, Robert Hunt, Raekwon Davis, Brandon Jones, Solomon Kinley, really, and then
that's Trowbridge.
Yeah, and then Blake Ferguson, because we know how valuable Blake Ferguson is. So why are you drafting a long snapper? I don't care how many picks you have. Why are you?
No, I agree. It's kind of a wasted pick.
But I would make the argument that 2021 was worst because you will literally walk away from this draft after this offseason when basically Javon leaves as a free agent, Liam Eichenberg leaves because if you sign Liam Eichenberg
as a free agent, be nice as a free agent.
As a free agent, but my thought is if you re-sign Liam Eichenberg, I think this city might like I think there might be a protest in my regards.
I would not be happy.
Yes. Hunter Long, I couldn't believe how underproductive he was. 6 receptions and like 48 yards for a 4-year career for Hunter Long. I that's stunning. The whole draft class, and then you know how I feel about the Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase.
Oh, you don't like it, and I hate it for a different reason than you do, but I hate it just as much as you do. I think that to me is a massively pivotal pick that the Dolphins whiffed on with all due respect to Jalen Waddle, but not because they didn't stay put at 3 and take Jamar Chase. That's not why.
Please explain why.
Okay,
because that's my thought process.
Okay, I know that.
You should have stayed there and taken Jamar Chase.
Okay, that would have been one way to play it. Okay, mind you, this was after 2020 when they passed up the chance at either Justin Jefferson or T. Higgins, but that's beside the point. 2021 arrives. They make that trade with San Francisco to go from 3 to 12, pick up 2 future number 1s and a future number, and then in a current number 3. Okay, at that point to me, it's like leave it alone. There's a lot of good players. Stay at 12. No, and then no, the Dolphins have to move up back to 6. Give up one of those first-round picks that they got for Jalen to draft Jalen Waddle, who he's a good solid wide receiver, top 15, maybe top 20 in the NFL. A semi-reach at number 6, and then, but instead of taking him, number 1, the value for the trade, would you give 2 number 1s for Jalen Waddle? Sorry, I don't. Which is in essence what they did. They passed up on Penei Sewell, and we keep bitching and moaning about the offensive line. You have a guy who, and correct me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, entering that draft, every scout, every draft analysis, that guy is solid. He's gold. There's no question he's going to be a complete stud.
Yeah, complete stud, but at right tackle. And did you really need it?
Lane Johnson, Omar, Lane Johnson. Would he look good in the Dolphins?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yes. They could have had him.
They could have Lane Johnson too. Yeah, Dolphins could have had Lane.
They picked Deion Jordan first. Would that have been a bad pick, even though it was 4th overall? I'm sorry. So I'm sorry. Even if, again, right tackle, generally speaking, and guard, to me, have less value on the offensive line unless they're special. Everybody was telling you Penei Sewell is special. Okay. So for anybody who wants to bitch about the Dolphin offensive line, it was right there.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Better player, Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase?
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Chase will flash more because he's a wide receiver. Who's more important to their team? Go ask the folks in Detroit.
Well, I would think. I mean, Jamar Chase carries that offense in Cincinnati,
and that offensive line carries the Detroit offense, and Sewell is the main guy.
That's true. Okay. Now, how will there be more Jamar Chases coming through the NFL college pipelines, or Penei Sewell's?
Jamar Chases.
I don't even think there's a Jamar Chase in this draft.
The guy from Arizona, McMillan, I believe his name is. Okay, forget Sewell then. You don't want Sewell, that's fine. Who was there? A couple
Micah Parsons was there so
So was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain II.
Did you need corner? I can't remember what they needed at that time, but
they had Byron Jones and they had X.
Oh God, you didn't need anything. Byron Jones and X, you were good. You were good. Then of course you had Noah Benogany, who was clearly gonna blossom.
That's not
hey, Noah started 40. Noah played 45% of the snaps in Washington.
I know, and he's a UFA. Maybe the Dolphins re-sign him, like he'd want to come back here. But my point is they really, really, really fail to maximize the value, particularly if you're going to make the move from 12 to 6. again, it's not a knock on Jalen Waddle. He's not nearly special enough to have warranted,
Yeah.
spitting away a future first-round pick.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I never thought about it from the standpoint. You're basically saying Jalen Waddle is worth 2 first-round picks, which is not accurate. Correct. Now, I know you got a future. You should have just stayed where you were.
Yes.
You should have just stayed where you were and selected, in my opinion, Jamar Chase. But anyway,
to me, they should have stayed at 12, and then they could have gotten Michael Parsons was a 12th overall pick, and they would have had an extra pick, first-round pick in 2022.
But that requires good drafting, and we all know the Dolphins do not do that.
And we should, because I was scolded about this on my own podcast in the comments, we should mention every team has misses, but some teams have more misses, some teams have more hits, and it's not by accident that the Eagles and the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I did a story earlier this season when I was trying to make my case for the job that Chris Greer had done. And it was really an analytical look on just draft picks that were still on the roster. And I think the Dolphins were at like 33% or 38%. I can't remember. And then people were like, well, what are good teams? What are like the good teams at? Correct. And the good teams were above 55% in retention of draft picks. Yeah. So if you're drafting and your drafting is at 38%, just actually good enough to be on your 53-man roster, like, come on, you don't even give yourself a chance. And people can't even say that, oh, it's because of the coaching change or collateral difference. No, you just got a lot of Noah Igbinoghenies, a lot of what's his name? Channing Tindalls, a lot of Eric Uzukamas, a lot of Skylar Thompsons, a lot of Muhammad Kamaras on your roster. And it's just, it's like it's a lot of just filler. A lot of filler. And it's one thing if you had coaches that could develop talent, and I do believe they have coaches that could develop talent. So you give those coaches that can develop talent young players, and in 2 years they become DeMar Hamlins for the Chiefs, and you can replace an age safety and put in Hamlin, and it doesn't look that bad. But you don't have any young talent that you could put into a spot by letting an age player go and then not expect a massive drop-off. There's nobody on this roster that gives you that right now.
No, and the other part of the issue, particularly in recent years, is the Dolphins have been so loose with draft picks and giving them away. And, of course, getting 2 taken away by the NFL for the tampering thing didn't help either. But they've been too loose at giving away draft picks to have as many misses as they've had, even though it may not be that many more than other teams. But like you mentioned, giving away a third to draft Liam Eichenberg. This year they gave away a third to draft Jalen Wright in the 4th round, and the dude was a kind of complete non-factor at the end. I mean, might it pan out down the road? Sure, but there's no guarantee, and you squandered a third.
Yeah, no, but in their defense, when they were trying to win it all and trying to add pieces that could get them over the hump, like a Bradley Chubb or a Jalen Ramsey and a Tyreek Hill, I'm not going to argue against the Tyreek Hill trade because a team was giving up one of the best players in the NFL, and you need to do what you need to do to change the trajectory of the franchise. And Tyreek did change the trajectory of the franchise. But Bradley Chubb, for instance, and that was not a move or a trade that I supported. They gave him the money as well. They borrowed on the deal twice now to create cap space. And you're at the point where you're looking at the Bradley Chubb trade and the situation. You have given up a first-round pick, if not more, for if you decide to cut Bradley Chubb this year, which is a possibility, for 2 years. Was that worth it? Or now do you have to force the issue of saying, we gave up a first-round pick and we gave this guy $40 million over the last 2 years. We got to see what we can get out of him. Like, how do you make that work when you got Bradley Chubb staring at you, probably at a $40 million? You can cut him and make him a June 1st cut, and you can clear $19.5 million, which really would address your cap issues. You can use that $19.5 million to probably add about 4 different starters, different pieces, especially when you work in their year one cap numbers. How do you approach the Bradley Chubb situation?
Very carefully. How's that for brilliant analysis?
Yeah.
Well, they're definitely going to have a conversation with him like they will with Terron. Like, Bradley, can we talk about the possibility of maybe addressing your contract? And the thing with Chubb, same deal with Armstead, though. If it's a June cap first, if they make him a regular cut, there's not a ton of cap savings. It's not nearly as significant. So, again, that's the same issue there. Does Chubb really have the juice to say, yeah, you're not touching my salary, cut me if you want to? Because what's he going to get on the open market?
That's exactly a great point. I mean, we talked about the Terron Armstead situation, and I know I've talked to veterans, especially when they get to a 13-year point. There's a certain dollar amount that they would put for playing that season. Yeah. The most of the veterans that I've talked to, especially going back to my I Am Athlete days, they weren't getting out of bed for less than $7 million a year. They were like, I'm not doing it if it's for less than $7 million a year. And a lot of times that's because of what they were making. Now, for Terron, he took a $5 million pay cut going from $15 to $10 million. I think you can create technically $10 million in cap space if you restructure him, give him another void year, finagle the numbers. And I think that this organization is committed to wanting Terron back, especially when you're going to have a young offensive line with a lot of young puppies, and they're going to have to learn the way. Yep. Who is going to teach them the way other than Terron? Is it going to be Austin Jackson? Like, no disrespect to Austin Jackson. I like Austin.
I know you like Austin. I like Austin too.
The whole run game fell apart when Austin Jackson went down.
Well, hold on. Because I looked at this. It was at the same time also as Terron started having his knee issues, number one. Number two, that whole running game fell apart. That was after the Buffalo game, which is when they started winning. So obviously the whole running game falling apart didn't really
but they were throwing a lot of quick, short stuff to mask the fact that they couldn't run the ball anymore. And then that was on to his shoulders.
But they were also winning, and the truth is they were bad. To me, the whole thing with the running game, and this was no different in 2023, is they were terrible situationally, i.e. short yardage situations. Both years they were bad. Even though last year they had the big gains and the big games to make the numbers look really.
And they punched it in the red zone with Mostert and his 21 touchdowns. But yes, they've been bad short yardage for 3 years, and that I think the only common thread is their scheme, their style. You're not going to outside zone short yard. You got to run inside zone. Huh?
They also lack power on the offensive line. I mean, What'd you hear when Aaron Brewer was signed to replace Connor Williams at center? Oh, he might be the most athletic center in the NFL. That's really awesome. That doesn't help you on 3rd and 1.
Now he's mowing down people though on the second level, but
on the second level, in space.
He's not moving a nose tackle. I 100% agree with you. Except he did move Christian Wilkins quite a bit, which is what helped him get here. I
got you.
Let's get back to so Terron, I think, is probably, you made the argument about Bradley Chubb, and I want to touch on Terron. Think about this from Terron's standpoint. What team out there is going to let Terron play Sunday without practicing all season, other than Miami Dolphins?
I think you'd be surprised. You don't think that guy's built enough equity around the NFL as a consummate pro whose tape is actually very good? I don't think that would be a major issue. And I've heard of other players around the league. In fact, it was the dude in Cleveland.
Joe Thomas?
It wasn't Joe Thomas. It was one of their interior offensive linemen who barely practiced his last year there. And he was like a Pro Bowl type player because he was having knee issues. So, no, I don't think that would be a factor.
Oh, okay. All right. But, well, I personally believe Terron probably in the $8 million year. I don't think he's going to get back that $10 million. It's probably going to be something in the neighborhood of 8 to 10. We'll see how that all plays out. And Terron might just say, no, thank you. Go ahead and release me, which he does have a little bit of leverage. And that's what Dolphin fans don't understand is Terron has leverage in this situation. and so does Bradley Chubb. Even though I agree with you, if the Dolphins said, hey, Bradley, we're going to make you a June 1st cut, we're going to just chalk our losses up. How do you make that up? How do you make that up if you're Bradley Chubb?
You don't. Not initially. I mean, no. You don't make it up because, correct me if I'm wrong, he's got no guaranteed salary coming up.
No, salary guarantees are done.
So, no, he wouldn't make up the amount of money he was going to get. What was his base salary, like 13 mil or something this year?
I think he's at $15 million this year. Let me just double check. I'm sorry. Bradley Chubb he's going to make 20 million, 19.5 base salary.
Okay.
I'm throwing in the workout bonus, and then he's got 680 in per game bonuses, which comes up to something like $40,000 a game that you play. I'm curious to see how this situation handles itself, because outside of basically giving Tua a nice big bonus, and then he's already going to get his money, but you're basically going to be committing to him a little bit longer than, roll the bill back a little bit.
Pretty much.
And I know there's certain people, I'm not going to call any names, who are just waiting for that deal, guaranteed money to be done so that they can move on and don't want any more commitments associated with Tua. I personally believe that they will not only shake down Terron, shake down Bradley, touch Tua, cut Raheem.
They don't have a choice. They don't have a choice with Tua, basically.
Yeah, I know this, but I'm glad you're at the point where you know this as well. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not saying I like it. I'm saying they don't have a choice. His cap number is 39, and then on top of that, he's on the roster on the third day of the league year, March 14th, and then there goes his $56 million for 2026 guaranteed. So, it's going to be again like this. They don't have a choice. They got to lower his cap number.
I mean, this is what you do with quarterbacks. The Buffalo Bills are going to do the same thing with Josh Allen. Kansas City did the same thing with Patrick Mahomes.
MVP.
Lamar
Jackson, the quarterback's an MVP.
Yes, and Lamar Jackson is they're probably going to have to retouch his deal as well. I'm not sure that he'll do that, considering he has most of the leverage and probably wants a new deal. But this is the way the quarterback game gets played. Unfortunately, Dolphins are not in a situation where they made him play on the fifth-year option, which obviously Alain Poupart was screaming from the mountaintops, make him play on the fifth-year option.
And was he right? Was he right?
Yes, he was right. Yes, he was right. Yes. I mean, here's my only gripe when you make that argument and play, I was right. Everybody was going to be right on that, unless Tua played all 17 games and was the MVP of the league and led them to playoff victories. Here's my thing.
No. No, sorry, Omar, but I will grant you this. The worst case scenario played out like immediately, like boom, concussion, the second game of the year. I mean, you want to talk about the disaster scenario. So obviously, I don't think anybody expected us, but you knew my issue with Tua wasn't just related to this guy's always going to have the big cloud over his head because he's not built to last. That's just a fact of life. And also, how far is he going to get you? And to me, it was a two-parter. And again, it's not just him, but he's the one getting the bag. And the Dolphins were 1-5 against teams with a winning record last year. Here we go again.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they reinvest in this team. As I said, they got to get money from Tua. They got to get money from Chubb. They got to get money from Terron. And obviously, I think Raheem is a dead man walking. I think Durham Smythe is a dead man walking. But when you potentially do those moves, when you potentially shake down those players and do those moves, you might be looking at a $30 million in surplus that you have room and cap space to kind of replenish this roster. Outside of addressing the trenches, which everybody in the world knows that they have to do. Chris Greer flat out and said, we got to do like we did in early days where we drafted a bunch of offensive linemen and reinvested and we got younger in our offensive line. Cool. If I give you $30 million to spend on the Dolphins, how are you using it? How do you utilize that?
I'm surprised you didn't say Greer told us, well, we're just as worried as the media is about the offensive line now. He's changed his tune.
I loved in the press conference where he goes, I was waiting for that question. It took longer than they both looked at their watches like, man, it only took you guys 15 minutes. We were hammering other things that we wanted. We knew we were right all along.
No, but as I wrote on Miami Dolphins on SI.com, cheap plug, not like the Dolphins haven't tried making moves on the offensive line. It's just that a lot of them haven't worked out. If you want to look at the model, Super Bowl model as a blueprint, as something you want to copy,
which team?
I wouldn't look at Kansas City because they have a freak at quarterback and one of the greatest head coaches in the history of the NFL, one of the greatest defensive coordinators in the history of the NFL. So I think they're a little bit an outlier. Look at the Eagles. What do the Eagles do every draft or almost all the time? Pound the trenches. Pound the trenches. Absolutely. Okay, so not just the offensive line, the defensive line, and there's a need because outside of Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell's a free agent, Benito Jones a free agent, Deshaun Hand's a free agent. So this is where they need to go. They need to go big in the draft. Again, all things equal, you don't pass up a complete stud, but all things equal, go big in the draft. If they're going to spend a lot of money on a player in free agency, although I'm like you, I don't see anybody getting a huge deal, but if they're going to focus on an area, to me, it needs to be the trenches. They're going to need to replenish at safety, but I don't know that you go after a high-ticket guy there.
There's nothing there, brother.
I know, but their two guys are free agents.
Yeah. No. They're man, when I comb through the free agency list of what's out there, and I'm hoping and checking to see that other players will be released, like Jonnu Smith was released, and there always are. There's always going to be. Every team is going to restocking its roster, redoing inventory, shaking down or releasing the Bradley Chubbs and Terron Armstead. But you better hope that happens because this free agent list of players, man, not looking good. Not looking good at all.
Trey Smith stands out, but he's going to be too pricey for the Dolphins. Who? Trey Smith.
Yes. And I don't target players from Super Bowl teams. I generally don't. They've been to the mountaintop, baby.
They like that hunger because they've already won it. Is that the deal?
That is correct. What is driving me if I've already won it? I'm just cashing. I'm just getting money. And South Florida is a bad place to be when you're just trying to get money.
And there's an argument to be made for your point with L'Jarius Sneed, who was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, goes to Tennessee and injury-riddled season did nothing for them.
Yeah.
After they gave him a bag.
It's it'll be interesting to see how they put this all together. But so I'm glad you're aware. You got to borrow from the Bank of Tua. It's just is what it is. The contract was set up that way. You're going to give him a $20 million signing bonus, drop his cap number in 2025, go to, get a loan from the bank for future years, be part of more of a commitment. But here's the thing about it. You did that for 2 years with Bradley Chubb, and it turned out all right, didn't it?
In what sense? I mean,
you can walk away this year without very much penalty, except for the initial investment that you made would have been a total waste.
Yeah, but we're talking about the quarterback position, which is only the most important position on the team.
Okay, and the second most important position is pass rushing, and they squandered that too. So
you also got nothing out of Bradley Chubb in 2024. So not by his fault, but fact remains.
I mean, those are choices that you did make because he was practicing and could have played and decided he didn't want to play against the Jets, go to the Meadowlands.
No, you don't think his injury guarantee played a role in that?
No, oh, absolutely. No, yeah, exactly. But you made the choice. And so if you're going to guard yourself against the injury guarantee, that means you are considering releasing him.
Oh, correct. And they wanted to keep the option open. Absolutely.
And if you're considering releasing him, then you're fine with the point of we gave up draft picks and money for a player that we didn't have much use for. We had one season from.
A really good investment. I mean, I'm
1.5 seasons.
That sounds like a very good investment to me.
No, I mean, I think they're at the point where they're in survival mode. I mean, let's be real about that.
Yes, absolutely.
If I'm trying to survive, I'm not worried about looking bad from a Bradley Chubb deal that I made 3 years ago. I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to do the best that I can, and which is why I say no harm in releasing him and starting fresh. You can go get a Khalil Mack for $8 million. If Bradley Chubb won't restructure his contract, go get Khalil Mack for half the price.
Assuming that's all he gets on the market.
He's a 30-year-old pass rusher. We'll yeah.
Really good year.
Yeah, we'll see. Definitely, Khalil Mack is actually a South Florida native. His girl's a South Florida native, so you know how that works around here. So it'll be interesting to see how they rebuild this team. We've got. I hate how I always feel about mock drafts before free agency.
Yes, you do.
They just absolutely make no sense whatsoever. So I'm not going to sit here and predict that the Dolphins are going to add a safety in with the 13th overall pick, because more than likely they can go in free agency and add safeties, draft too. But we definitely have a real roster problem that needs to be restocked, and the Dolphins need to figure out a way to create the cap space. We'll be talking more about that on Dolphins in Depth, and I know you'll be talking about it on All Dolphins here in the coming weeks. Poupart, anything you want to promote on the work that you got going on?
All of it. Check it out. Miami Dolphins on SI.com. Free content, a ton of it every single day. Check out the podcast.
Rub that free in
All
my
Dolphins
face.
podcast.
Always got to rub that free in my face.
Omar, you know these are my feelings for you. So
yeah,
it's all love. Check out the podcast as well, All Dolphins podcast. And
that's it. Well, we appreciate it, and it'll be interesting to see who wins the Super Bowl. I'm going with the Chiefs. The NFL needs the dynasty. Poupart is obviously a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, I have a lot of buddies who work for the Eagles and cover the Eagles. You want to hear something funny on my way out that you'll love this? So I appeared on that French Canadian podcast last night that covers the NFL, and they're asking for my prediction. So I literally gave them 30-28 Eagles. And this morning I look up, I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I see a prediction for our good friend, former Dolphin linebacker, Kyle Van Noy, who has Eagles 30, Chiefs 28, exact same score I have. How about that?
Okay, look at Kyle Van Noy making the same prediction as you.
Friend Kyle Van Noy.
Kyle Van Noy. All righty, folks. It was always a pleasure, and we will be back next week on Dolphins in Depth.